Greetings and welcome to the 5th episode of Oblivion Modding Showcases. As always, I'm your host Doc Elfguy, and today we have another 10 Oblivion mods for your viewing pleasure. This time around for a bit of a random theme, but there's still some amazing mods in the sign-up. And before we get to all that though, I would like to just remind everyone again that episode 6 will be focusing on a mage theme with a list of magical related mods. And while we've already gotten a number of great suggestions, more recommendations are always welcome. And episode 6 will be out in 2 weeks, so that's plenty of time to submit your mod recommendations to be included. And anyway, as always, you can find the download links for all mods shown down in the video description below. So let's get things started with our popular mod of the week, which this week is Unique Landscapes Aspen Wood by Apallo. Now, the Unique Landscapes mods are some of the most popular mods for Oblivion, and, rightfully so. Bethesda shipped Oblivion with a really, kind of boring, typical European-style countryside, which, while containing some rather scenic areas, was, kind of devoid of a sense of unique identity. Something that Unique Landscapes obviously fixes, and does so in a spectacular manner. Now, there is a full compilation mod for the Unique Landscapes mods for Oblivion, and I've included a download link to that in the video description below. But since looking at all those mods in one showcase would simply be far too much to cover in a video like this, we'll be just focusing on one with the goal of covering more in future episodes. Regardless, Aspen Wood here is a truly scenic and beautiful area. And before I show off too much, I did want to, bring up the map here real quick, so you guys can see the borders of what this mod changes. Basically, it changes the landscape and adds new landmarks to the area between these two rivers here and the Yellow Road. Anyway, a lot of the landscape changes of the Aspen Wood are centered around this lake here. I'm not actually sure if it has a name, I don't remember seeing one on the map, but you'll find tree-lined forested paths going along the lake here with, ancient ruined stone walls covered in ivy, flowering trees and bushes, and this is just a really lovely forest glade right here along the shores of this small lake, with a set of, rocky cliffs on the opposite side providing a bit of verticality to the environment, not to mention some more ruined fort towers and walls and the like, all surrounded by beautiful wildlife and lots of overgrown foliage. And moving on though, this mod adds some really lovely locations to this area, including a set of really tall waterfalls that go all the way up to the top of this hill here, and really there's been a lot of verticality added to this area, I think. I swear, I remember this region being a bit more, hilly, but not quite this dramatically. And of course, there's been a lot more bits of civilization added to the landscape here, which is nice given how unrealistically unpopulated the Cyrodiil countryside was in vanilla Oblivion. And here you'll find lots of, farmhouses and the like. And moving on to the top of this bluff here, this is probably one of the centerpieces of the Aspen Wood, a giant statue overlooking this new domain with the lake down below. It's truly a beautiful and fantastical sight that'll make you appreciate the long hike up to, get up here. Now, I would like to just, spend a bit more time flying around this massive statue here because the views from the top of this hill are just, spectacular and amazing. And the author has done a fantastic job of creating this sort of dramatic bit of landscaping here that fully takes advantage of the surrounding areas. But personally, my favourite spot in the Aspen Woods is this small area here by the lake where an old imperial stone tower stands tall amongst the trees, surrounded by an absolutely breathtakingly beautiful set of flowers, ruined walls and moss-covered, watering wells and things of that nature. And this area is just simply astounding to my mind, and really shows the possibility for a creative and beautiful environment with Oblivion's modding tools. And of course, I really like that there's, just a few Imperial outposts in this mod. I always found it, kind of odd that the Imperial Legion seemingly didn't have a single outpost or fort in all the Imperial Province. I mean, what are they doing? This is the capital province, and they have no one protecting or maintaining the roadways and routes of trade? I mean, how does this empire even function? But I digress. This is one of the 3 Imperial outposts in the Aspen Woods that you can find, though they don't all have map markers. And real quick, here you can see one of the ruins in the Aspen Woods, and I believe this was a pre-existing set of alien ruins that you could find in vanilla Oblivion, but they've been made, much more scenic with this landscape package, and I don't think this mod actually adds any new dungeons. But don't quote me on that. And I also want to show off a few of the farms here, since there's, some really beautiful farming locations in the Aspen Woods. Like, this one here that's bordered by, lots of flowers, and you'll find a lot of these small farms, like this one here, that have animal livestock or just a few vegetables growing out here along the many dirt paths of the Aspen Woods. And the last thing I wanted to do here is show some of the new interiors here, because this mod does include about a half dozen or more new interiors for the farms and Imperial outposts of this area, including what looks like, fairly unique and custom-built Imperial offices for the scouts and patrol officers of this region. And this is just a fantastically well-done landscape mod, and, is definitely worth checking out. For our house mod of the week this week, we have Fiddler's Green by Sand Vane. And this mod adds a lovely and unique looking green cottage to the shores of the Gold Coast a ways north of Anvil, and it has a kind of, weather-worn coastal feel about it, with some, clear nautical inspirations. And the house also comes with a small docks and a boat out back, fitting in with that, coastal theme there. And there's also a fair bit of landscaping and detailing around the property, like with a clothing line out back, and an overgrown set of stairs going down to the docks and all that. And you can see this house on the map here, and it does come with a map marker. It's also right next to the Aeolid Ruin that's associated with the Knights of the Nine DLC, but I couldn't see any incompatibilities or conflicts when I played them, together. So, I think they should work together just fine, at least theoretically. And anyway, this cozy little home comes with a small workshop off to the side of the main house here, which is just, really nicely detailed and cluttered already, including a lot of items strewn about that makes the place, kind of feel a bit lived in, really. And inside the actual cottage here, you'll find a small and cozy lounge area with a little fireplace and a chair to take in the fire with, as well as a fully stocked and detailed kitchen with, hanging meats and crates full of fruits. And upstairs, you'll find the master bedroom, and this isn't a large house by any stretch of the imagination, but it is quite cozy and warmly furnished to make you, feel at home. Now, something to note here, nearly everything you see in this house is actually a container, and some of these have items already in them that respawn, like there's a plate of cakes, a crate of fruit, a bowl of cheese, all of tons of different foods for you to eat at your leisure, and there's even some tea leaves that if you gather them, you can put in the kettle here to make a nice warm cup of tea. And of course, there's also an ingredient sorter where you can, sort ingredients, potions and scrolls, or retrieve them, and the ingredients container actually sorts out with a ton of ingredients already included, which is quite convenient. And overall, this is just a really cozy and scenic little home along the coast. Moving on, this week's gameplay mod of the week is Clocks of Cyrodiil by William C. And this mod does pretty much what the title suggests. It adds a series of clock towers and, city clocks to all the major cities and towns of Cyrodiil. Like, this clock tower here that you can, now find in the city of Coral. And as you would expect, these clocks do keep track of the in-game time, providing an immersive way for the residents of Cyrodiil to keep an eye on the time as they go about their daily lives. And, at a technology level, this does kind of make a lot of sense, given the apparent technology of the Empire. Clocks seem like the sort of thing that they really should have, particularly given that in the real world, there have been clocks dating back thousands of years to some very early designs back in ancient Greece and Rome. And in any event, each city of Cyrodiil has a different clock. Some are, full clock towers, and others are smaller clocks stationed at major intersections, like this one here. And there's even a few that can be found attached to different buildings and the like there's one in the Imperial City, and the clock tower in Anvil is actually attached to the Mages Guild. And each one is fairly unique looking, like the clock tower in Leowin looks completely different from the clock tower in Coral, or the street clocks of the Imperial City look different from the street clocks of Breville, and so on and so forth. And some of these clocks keep track of more than just the time. Some keep track of everything from the season to the weather conditions and the day-night cycle, and they really pack a lot of information, honestly. And what's also really cool is that these clock towers do have interiors with lower levels, filled with old gears, hammers, and oil stains, and upper levels with access to the clock mechanisms themselves, so you can, see how these clock towers operate. And again, this is just a really cool and fun immersion mod that adds a rather nice set of clock towers and street clocks to the game that are pretty nice looking, and they work really well, and I think they blend in perfectly with the city environments here. Next up we have our dungeon of the week, and this week we have the Forgotten Dungeon by Demon Lord 7654. And this one starts out when you hear a rumor about some sort of mysterious dungeon while you're, hanging around Coral. And this will lead you to this curious-looking cavern with a set of skeletal corpses outside it, up in the foothills west of Coral. And real quick, here you can see it on the map, and it does include a map marker naturally. And inside you'll find a dark and long set of hallways, clearly the ruins of some large underground complex. And as you delve deeper, you'll find a large number of these spectral knights and ghosts guarding the lair of the Forgotten Dungeon. And this is very much a traditional dungeon romp, with the dark and ruined corridors. It's very much in the vein of, a classical D&D style adventure set of dungeons, I think. At least, that's the impression I got. But, more on that in a moment. Anyway, this isn't exactly a straightforward dungeon crawl, because there's also a lot of puzzles, riddles, and, challenges for you to face before you can delve deeper and deeper into the layers of the Forgotten Dungeon. And a lot of this, at least in the first level here, involves, finding keys to unlock the various gates that block your path. Some of these will be easy to find, others will involve, some riddles and, observing the environment around you for clues on how to proceed. And there's also a lot of, traditional dungeon crawler enemies for you to face down here, including strange slime creatures and ooze, as well as the ever, classic giant spiders, and by the gods, I really bloody hate spiders. I am not a fan. And moving on, once you find a key, you can use it to open one of the gates here, but, fair warning, there's sometimes several gates in a row, and you'll need several keys in order to be able to get through to the rest of the dungeon, and there's also a lot of situations where you'll need to, stop and think about how to get past some of these obstacles. Like, for example, you may need to lure enemies to chase after you in order to trigger a pressure weight and open a gate to a new area, something that you didn't really have to worry about in vanilla Oblivion dungeons, and it'll help you to, scout out an area first by sneaking around before just, rushing in and killing everything in sight. Likewise, you'll also encounter a ton of interesting little puzzles that you wouldn't find in vanilla Oblivion, like this area, where you'll find teleporters that'll take you to different places or just, teleport you back to where you just were after you, try to jump over this little hole here. And of course, the Forgotten Dungeon isn't just a bunch of long hallways, sudden pitfalls, and small rooms though. There's also plenty of larger, curious, and unique halls to explore as you go further and further into the depths. And according to the author, there's actually about 33 interior cells to this dungeon, and we're only going to be, looking at a few of them here, so we're just barely scratching the surface. And obviously, we'll be leaving the vast majority of the content down here for you guys to find on your own. But regardless, there's some, really cool, unique encounters down here, like these skeletons that suddenly rise up from death as you approach, making for some, potentially large-scale battles. And anyway, this is a really cool, really massive, and really fun dungeon to explore and fight through, with tons of things for you to find, and, it actually kind of reminds me a lot of Legends of Grimlock, and to a lesser extent, Arx Fatalis, or a lot of those, other classic dungeon delver games. So if you enjoy those sort of things, and, like Oblivion, this is definitely a mod that you should check out. For our items of the week this week, we have Crystal Torch Recolors by Chakuru11, and this is a pretty small, yet, still pretty cool mod that adds a variety of small crystal torches for you to find somewhere in the Imperial City. And like the name of the mod implies, they come in a variety of fun colours, including the regular old white colour that you can see here. And here you can see one of the red crystal torches, and they're pretty simple and, small translucent crystals that spin around and hum a little bit, sort of like the Nern roots. And you'll notice there's a few particle effects here as well. Each crystal has a pretty decent lighting radius, so you can, use them instead of regular torches to find your way in dungeons and, along the roads of Cyrodiil at night time. And they certainly do add a nice bit of colour to the environment, and in total you can find about 7 or 8 of these crystal torches. And I don't believe they have a timer, so they should, last forever, at least theoretically anyway. You can see a bunch of them together here, and they're not particularly large, but you could use them to light up your house, if you wanted to anyway, assuming you can, get them to sit still long enough with Oblivion's wacky physics engine. And, this is just a neat little items mod to check out if you wanted something a little different in the torches department. This week's quest mod of the week is House of Uranus by Dalquist, and this mod adds a new faction to the game world, actually multiple factions, but more on that later. And this faction questline starts out when you next visit the Market District in the Imperial City after you've completed the first part of the Oblivion main quest. You'll be approached by this Dark Elf here, looking for help with a particular matter involving an initiation quest into the wealthy and expansive House of Uranus, a Morrowind house that's moved into the Imperial Province and established a home here in the capital city. And as it turns out, this particular initiation quest involves, getting a member of the Imperial Watch to confess who he's actually working for. And this will require some, pretty high speechcraft and personality skills to get through, and you may need to bribe him a little bit, but once you do, you'll be taken to the meeting place for the new recruits, where an ambush is apparently, already underway, and this mod is built largely on the, sort of Morrowind style of faction design, and that means you'll be seeing a lot of faction conflict. Out of the 3 factions added in by this mod, conflicts will occasionally arise with the other 2 over the course of doing any of the major quest lines here, and you can join at least 1 or possibly 2 of the other factions as well. But anyway, after the fight is over, you'll be accepted into House Valranus, and there's a ton of dialogue here explaining the house's history, their competing factions, and a fair amount of, just fairly well-written dialogue in general about a bit of everything. This mod has over 30 new quests included, all of it, silently voiced, so you'll want the universal silent voice mod to make sure you have, time to read all the content here. And as you go up in rank in House Valranus, you'll do tasks for a variety of members of the house, mostly the higher-ranked elders, many of whom have their own plots and schemes separated from, that of the house's overall goals and agendas, so there's quite a bit of, politics and intrigue involved in house affairs. Again, a bit of a callback to the way Morrowind handled things, and you'll also be able to ask other house members for advice and help with, securing some convenience features, like getting one of the Imperial Legion guards on your personal payroll, and, stuff like that. And the quests you'll end up doing are, fairly varied, and, most, at least early on, don't involve a whole lot of dungeon delving or combat specifically, but instead involve things like, tracking and stalking members of a rival faction that are secretly suspected to be vampires, or, taking care of a small band of skooma-crazed goblins that have, somehow gotten into a cellar in order to get some important information out of an informant for the House Valranus, or intercepting couriers from rival factions in order to stop their lines of communication and figure out what the next moves are going to be, or yes, even eventually dungeon delving with clearing out bands of bandits, marauders, and more, all in the name of House Valranus. And there's a ton of content here with over 30 quests, some of which have multiple, possible endings and outcomes that may affect your playthrough. And certainly if you enjoy, more Morrowind-style quests in particular with a fair amount of, exposition, this is definitely a mod that you should check out. Next up, we have our Landmass for the week, and this week we have Serene Island by Ariel 1000. And before we get too much into the showcase, I must confess this isn't a particularly large Landmass mod, and is truthfully, more of a house mod to be honest, adding a small but, very peaceful island off the Gold Coast near the city of Anvil here. And when you first arrive, you'll find a key to the house and a message waiting for you in this mailbox here. It seems that for whatever reason, the last owner left in a bit of a hurry. And like I said before, far from the massive Landmass mods that we've showcased in the past, this is a more quiet and, serene island that's designed more to be a place for you to escape to, with no hostile enemies or long quest lines for you to do, or, anything of that nature. This is simply a lovely estate for you to, live in on your very own private isle. And this island has a number of lovely and scenic locations, including a small greenhouse here by the shore, a set of waterfalls, and a small pond over here by the cliffs, making for a wonderful little area for you to, take a swim in if you so desire. And of course, the greenhouse here comes with a number of vegetables that you can harvest. And the island also comes with a number of scenic gardens, including, you might note, a set of staff that maintains the property, including a housekeeper and a gardener. Of course, the capstone to this lovely island in the Obsidian Sea is the main manor house, located up here on top of this bluff, with a lovely set of stairs up to the main house, and an enclosed, fenced-off patio grounds right around the house, which includes, seating for outdoor dining, a telescope for viewing the stars at night, and some really scenic views of the surrounding areas. And truly, this is a very cozy looking manor here. Now, there's also a cliffside path that goes along the island's hillier side here, providing a nice sense of verticality to this small isle right outside the main waterways for Anvil's harbour. And you can get some pretty good views from up here, to be honest, including a nice view of Anvil there in the distance, and there's also a small observation point where you can, just sit and relax up here as well. And real quick, here you can see where the island is on the map. It has a very short commute to Anvil overall, and of course it does include a map marker as well. And anyway, moving on, inside with the main manor house here, you'll find a fairly modest-sized home that's lavishly decorated and detailed, and I do apologise, there's a slight FPS hidden here, But regardless, in the main central chambers for this abode, you'll find a small lounge area here off to the left side with a roaring fireplace. There's also a small table for, playing chess naturally, and a dining room off to the side here. And you'll notice that this house is already largely decorated already. A few of these decorations, I believe, can't be moved, but there's also a couple of display cases for you to use. And over in the other room, you'll find the kitchen, which comes with the estate's housekeeper to maintain the interior here. And up on the second floor, you'll find a cozy small guest bedroom that a companion or NPC staff could use, assuming it isn't, already occupied by the housekeeper. And across the hallway, you'll find the library and study, which again comes with a bit pre-decorated already, with lots of books on the shelves and a cool map of Tamriel up on the wall here. You'll also find an alchemical lab that also doubles as a display hall, with a stand here for brewing potions and a couple of display cases that are empty and, can be filled by whatever loot you want to display. And of course, there's also a master bedroom up here as well, though a bit on the small side really, but there's a bit of space in here for, storage as well. And downstairs you'll find the cellar, which includes a workroom which has been, immersively detailed. And there's also a small wine cellar area where you can, sit back and do a bit of wine tasting or, whatever have you. And overall, while this isn't some grand landmass, it certainly is a lovely island estate to live on, and definitely worth checking out if that's something you're looking for. For our NPC Mod of the Week this week, we have Companion Fergus by Siler0712, and with this mod, while exploring Tamriel, you might stumble upon a bandit camp that's been assaulted by this fellow here, a seemingly, simple traveller on his way to the Imperial City, who's taken a slight detour to deal with this riffraff and these vagabond bandits here, and, quite possibly gotten a bit in over his head until you come to his aid. And it's a bit of a fight. There's about a half dozen bandits or so here, and also a ringleader that you have to fight through. But once it's all over, you can accompany Fergus to the Imperial City, but he won't actually become your companion right away. He has his own errands to attend to in the capital, and he can't, just go off adventuring quite yet, just at the flick of a hat or something like that. Anyway, once he's done with his task in the capital, he'll meet you in the Foaming Flask in the Imperial City for drinks, and should you so desire, he can become your companion and fight by your side. Though there's a bit of dialogue to get through, of course, before you can get that option. And something to note here, Fergus is a fully voiced companion. That means he has voice-acted lines of dialogue for, just about everything. And from casual observation from what I've played, that amounts to hundreds of unique lines of dialogue, from, different greetings, background quips, and, fighting shouts, to details about his personal history, as we'll see later on, and, various other companion features. Now, like any good companion, you can access Fergus's inventory, so you can have him carry extra items or give him new gear to wear. He originally doesn't actually start out with a whole lot, so you'll probably want to give him a new set of armor and some healing potions, just in case. And Fergus also does come with a lot of companion abilities and dialogue options to choose from that allow you to, order him to do all sorts of activities, or to, perform a certain way in combat or in dungeons. Like you can have him, carry a torch in dark places or cast healing spells on you if you get too low on health during a fight or something like that. Or cast an area of effect health spell if you're traveling with a party of more than one companion. And you can also have him, look around for ingredients, provide lockpicks, or, just tell him to engage with the environment, like finding a place to sit. And anyway, we're kind of skipping over a lot of features here, but Fergus has a lot of, content with a ton of companion features, personal background history that he'll reveal over time, and according to the mod author, the ability to romance him eventually, regardless of your character's gender. He's also, quite handy to have in combat situations, and will certainly help, even the odds when you're going up against a large band of bandits or brigands or what have you. And, if you're looking for a feature-complete companion with lots of dialogue, Fergus may well be a really good fit for you. This week's new Meshes and Textures Mod of the Week is Fort Ruins Retexture by Logan, and this is quite obviously a complete retexture for all those, ruined forts that you see around the Imperial Province. As one of the most common types of dungeons, Fort Ruins are a pretty typical sight along the roads, rivers, and wilderness of Cyrodiil, so it's nice to have a really high quality replacer like this that visually updates the textures to look a lot more, well, detailed. You'll notice the colouring here is a bit different from vanilla Oblivion, slightly more grey and, less vibrant than the original textures were, which, were kind of that sort of a colourful tan shade, or, something of that nature. And anyway, as I've said before, in the Morrowind Modding Showcases series, I'm not really a texture expert, but having said that, I've always, really enjoyed Logan's work, both for Oblivion and especially, Morrowind. He makes some really top-notch replaces that I always enjoy playing with, and, since there's not really a whole lot for me to comment on here about the technical aspects of this replacer set here, I'll just, let the music take over here for a bit, so you guys can just, look at this replacer for yourselves. Real quick, we're going to take a look at the interior textures here, because this mod does include replaces for the interior set of the fort ruins here, though apparently when it first released it didn't actually have all this. That's an addition from version 2.0 I believe, but anyway, you can get an idea of how this all looks in one of these, darker dungeon environments here, and I'll just leave off here again for a bit. Overall, this is a really high quality replacer and, definitely worth checking out. But moving on for our final mod this week, we have our underrated mod of the week, which this time around is Diverse Alchemy Apparatuses by Skander Gran. And this is a fairly simple items mod that adds a variety of new alchemical equipment and a few new miscellaneous items to the game, namely to the main ingredient shop here in the Imperial City, where you can buy them for a price, and they range in cost from 8,000 to, nearly 2,000 septims. A lot of these items are sort of, retextures with, similar stats to master level alchemical equipment, but it's nice to have a bit of variety nonetheless. I've gathered a ton of the new alchemical items here for you to check out, and, again, these are, mostly simple retextures using the same texture styles as you'll find with a lot of the day-to-day items around Cyrodiil. Like there's a ceramic set of alchemical equipment, a silver set, daedric, whitestone, and Aeolid varieties as well, each with, different stats and the like. And finally, here's a batch of random miscellaneous items which include hourglasses, scales, and crystal balls. And this isn't a big mod by any stretch of the imagination, but if you want just a bit more variety in alchemical items specifically to decorate your lair with, this might be worth checking out. And anyway, that wraps up this episode of Oblivion Modding Showcases. Again, as a reminder, episode 6 will be mage themed, so if you have any recommendations for that, do please post them below. And also, if you're a Morrowind modder, December is Morrowind Modding Madness, a month-long team-based modding competition where Morrowind modders are challenged to make 4 mods in a mere 4 weeks. You can check out more about that in our announcement video, and anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.